"You've got to be kidding me," said Eva Davis. She abandoned her black twin boys when they were 1. Now, 25 years later, she's been hired to redesign their mansion. Her white hands still shake when one of them drops the only photo they have of her. "Tell me, do you think she'll walk through that door?" Take a breath and listen close. "You've got to be kidding me." Eva Davis stared at the address on her phone, then back up at the sprawling mansion before her. The ornate iron gates stood like sentinels, guarding a world she'd never been meant to enter. Her beaten-up Honda looked embarrassingly out of place in the circular driveway, lined with perfectly manicured hedges. How many times had she imagined this moment? How many sleepless nights had she spent wondering where they were, if they were safe, if they were loved? 25 years of questions, regrets, and what-ifs. And now, by some cruel twist of fate, her interior design firm had been hired to renovate the very home where they might live. What were the chances? Minneapolis was a big city. There had to be thousands of twins. But twin brothers, both successful doctors, both adopted. It couldn't be a coincidence. Eva's hands trembled as she switched off the ignition. What if they recognized her somehow? Would they see their own eyes staring back at them? Or had her features been completely erased by time and their father's dominant genes? "Can we really redesign our lives after we've abandoned the blueprints?" she whispered to herself. The question hanging heavy in the air of her car. 25 years ago, she'd been a different person. Young, terrified, and overwhelmed by the responsibility of twins when their father had walked out upon discovering her pregnancy. Her decision had been made in desperation, not malice. Would they ever understand that? Hook 2. What secrets will this mansion reveal about her past? The mansion's grand entrance loomed before her. Its massive oak doors like the cover of a book she'd been afraid to open for decades. Eva gathered her portfolio, her color swatches, and what remained of her courage. She was here for a job, the biggest commission of her career, a job that could launch her small design firm into Minneapolis's elite circles. She couldn't afford to let personal ghosts derail this opportunity. As she approached the entrance, memories flooded back with each step. The weight of 2 tiny bodies in her arms, the smell of their newborn skin, the agonizing drive to the adoption agency, the paperwork signed through tears that never seemed to dry. The doorbell echoed inside, sounding like a gong of judgment to her ears. Footsteps approached and Eva straightened her blazer, adopting the professional demeanor that had become her armor. The door swung open, revealing a tall man with rich dark skin, kind eyes, and a warm smile. Eva's breath caught in her throat. Those eyes, they were her father's eyes, the same shape and intensity she saw in her own mirror each morning. "Miss Davis, I'm Dr. Spencer Thompson. Thank you for coming. My brother and I have heard wonderful things about your work." His voice was deep, cultured, nothing like the cries she remembered from those sleepless nights when they were infants. Eva extended her hand, praying he wouldn't notice how it trembled. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Dr. Thompson. Thank you for this opportunity." Did he hear the catch in her voice? Did he see how she couldn't look away from his face, drinking in every detail like a woman dying of thirst? "Please come in. My brother will join us soon. He's just finishing up a call." Eva stepped into the grand foyer, taking in the soaring ceilings, the marble floors, the sweeping staircase. These men had done well for themselves, far better than she could have provided as a struggling single mother all those years ago. Beautiful home, she managed, her designer's eye taking over where her maternal instincts threatened to overwhelm her. Georgian revival. Indeed, you know your architecture, Dr. Thompson looked impressed. My brother and I fell in love with it immediately, though it needs some updating. The previous owners had interesting taste. He led her through to a spacious living room where family photos lined the walls. Eva's eyes darted from frame to frame, hungrily absorbing glimpses of the lives she'd missed. Graduation photos, white coats, two identical boys growing into accomplished men. And there in the center of the arrangement, a smiling older couple, African American, distinguished, proud, with their arms around two teenage boys, their adoptive parents, the people who had raised her sons, loved them, guided them to become the successful men they were today. "That's our parents," Dr. Thompson said, following her gaze. "They gave us everything." The words pierced Eva like a physical blow. She clenched her jaw, fighting back the emotion that threatened to spill over. "They must be very proud." "They are. Mom's actually the one who suggested we hire you. She's followed your work for years." A new level of complication Eva hadn't anticipated. Their adoptive mother had followed her career. Did she know? Was this some elaborate setup? Before she could process this information, footsteps sounded in the hallway and a voice identical to Dr. Spencer Thompson's called out, "Sorry I'm late." The second man who entered the room was indistinguishable from the first, except for his glasses and slightly shorter haircut. Dr. John Thompson stopped abruptly when he saw Eva, a strange expression crossing his face. "Have we met before?" he asked, his head tilted slightly as if trying to place her in his memory. Eva's heart hammered against her ribs as 25 years of secrets teetered on the edge of exposure. Had she made a terrible mistake by coming here? Should she lie, run, confess? "I don't believe so," she managed, the words bitter on her tongue. "I'm Eva Davis. I'll be designing your renovation." As John Thompson stepped forward to shake her hand, a small faded photograph fell from his pocket, fluttering to the floor between them. Eva bent to pick it up, turning it over in her trembling fingers, and found herself staring at a much younger version of her own face, holding two newborn babies, tears streaming down her cheeks, the only photograph she'd allowed the adoption agency to include in their file. Time froze as the three of them stared at the photograph. Eva felt like she was falling, the room spinning around her as she tried desperately to maintain her composure. John was the first to move, snatching the photo from her shaking fingers with surprising force. "Where did you get this?" His voice was cold, nothing like the warm greeting his brother had offered. His eyes, her father's eyes, were now hard with suspicion. "I didn't." "It fell from your pocket," Eva stammered, her designer's poise evaporating under his scrutiny. Spencer stepped closer, peering at the photo in his brother's hand. His expression shifted from confusion to shock, eyes darting between the photograph and Eva's face. "You're her," he said quietly. It wasn't a question. Eva felt the ground beneath her feet dissolve. 25 years of carefully constructed barriers crumbled in an instant. The silence that followed seemed to stretch into eternity, broken only by the distant ticking of a grandfather clock in the hallway, counting down the seconds of her unraveling life. "I think you should leave," John said finally, his voice flat and controlled. "Please let me explain," Eva began, but John cut her off with a raised hand. "This meeting is over. We'll find another designer." He turned away, photo still clutched tightly in his fist. Spencer remained still, studying her face with an intensity that made her skin prickle. "How did you find us?" he asked. More curious than accusatory. "I didn't," Eva said, finding her voice despite the trembling in her limbs. "I had no idea. Your names on the contract were just M. Thompson and M. Thompson. I never knew what you were named. What happened to you after I signed the papers?" The words felt inadequate. Hollow echoes of the turmoil inside her. John turned back, incredulity written across his features. "You expect us to believe this is a coincidence? That after 25 years of silence, you just happened to walk into our home with color swatches and floor plans?" "John," Spencer said softly. Always the mediator, even as children, Eva guessed. "Hear her out. There's nothing to hear, John snapped. She made her choice a long time ago. The words cut deeper than any knife could have. Eva clutched her portfolio to her chest like a shield, though it offered no protection against the pain in her eldest son's eyes. Yes, eldest by 6 minutes according to the birth certificates. You're right, she said quietly. I did make a choice. And every day since, I've wondered if it was the right one. The admission hung in the air between them, raw and honest. John scoffed, but Spencer's expression softened slightly. Why? He asked simply. One word, but it contained a lifetime of questions. Why did you leave us? Why didn't you want us? Why are you here now? Eva looked around the room at the evidence of their successful lives. At the family photos showing love and stability. At the certificates on the wall celebrating their achievements. How could she explain the terror of a 22-year-old white woman alone after her black boyfriend abandoned her on discovering she was pregnant with twins? How could she convey the vicious comments from her own parents who disowned her for ruining her life with those children? How could she make them understand the crushing poverty, the lack of support, the impossible choice she'd felt forced to make? I was young, alone, and terrified, she began, each word feeling like it was ripped from some hidden place inside her. Your father left as soon as he found out I was pregnant. My parents disowned me. I had no money, no support system, no way to give you the life you deserved. John turned his back, showing her exactly what he thought of her explanation. But Spencer gestured toward the sofa. Sit down, please. Eva perched on the edge of the designer's sofa, Italian leather, her professional mind noted absurdly, while Spencer took a seat across from her. John remained standing rigid by the fireplace. I wanted to keep you both more than anything, Eva continued. The dam finally breaking on 25 years of unspoken words. But I couldn't bear the thought of watching you grow up in poverty, facing discrimination from both sides because of who your parents were. I thought I was giving you a better chance. A better chance? John laughed without humor. How convenient for your conscience, John. Spencer warned again, then turned back to Eva. The couple who adopted us, the Thompsons, they told us our birth mother wanted us to stay together. That was her only condition. Eva nodded, tears threatening to spill over. I couldn't bear the thought of you being separated. You were all each other had. For the first time, a flash of something other than anger crossed John's face. He glanced at his brother, and Eva saw years of shared history pass between them in that look. A bond that had started in her womb and continued despite her absence. The Thompsons were good parents, Spencer said, his voice gentle. They gave us everything they had. Love, support, opportunities. I can see that, Eva said, gesturing to the home around them, the evidence of their success. You both became doctors. Spencer nodded. I'm a pediatric surgeon. John is a cardiologist. Pride swelled in Eva's chest, immediately followed by a crushing wave of grief for all she had missed. First steps, first words, school plays, graduations, every milestone that mothers were supposed to witness. We need to call Mom and Dad, John said abruptly, pulling out his phone. Eva's heart sank. Of course, they would want their real parents here, the people who had earned that title through years of love and sacrifice, not the woman who had signed them away. Wait, Spencer said, raising a hand to stop his brother. Let's think about this. They're in Florida for the month. They should know, John insisted. They will, but right now, I think we need time to process this ourselves. John stared at his brother for a long moment, then pocketed his phone with a reluctant nod. Did you ever look for us? Spencer asked Eva, returning to the central question that hung unspoken between them. The adoption was closed at my request, Eva admitted. I thought it would be easier for all of us for there to be a clean break. I didn't want to confuse you or disrupt your lives." She paused, then added softly, "But I never stopped thinking about you. Every birthday, every Christmas, I wondered where you were, if you were happy. Yet you never reached out," John pointed out, his voice still sharp with accusation. "Not once in 25 years. I respected the boundaries of the adoption," Eva said. "And I was afraid. Afraid you would hate me. Afraid I'd discover you hadn't been placed with a good family. Afraid I'd find out I'd made the wrong choice." She met his gaze directly. "It seems I was right about at least one of those fears." The room fell silent again. Outside, the sun had begun to set, casting long shadows across the expensive furnishings. How strange that the most important conversation of her life was happening in a place of such beauty and privilege, surrounded by the trappings of the life she'd never been able to provide them. "I think," Spencer said finally, "that we all need some time to think. This is a lot to process." Eva nodded, gathering her portfolio and standing on legs that felt like they might give way beneath her. "I understand. I'll withdraw from the project, of course. I can recommend several excellent designers who know." Spencer's interruption surprised both Eva and John, who turned to his brother with an incredulous expression. "The renovation needs to happen, and your firm was chosen for a reason. Your work speaks for itself, regardless of personal complications." "Spencer, you can't be serious," John protested. "Completely serious," Spencer replied, his voice firm. "We're professionals. We can handle this professionally." He turned to Eva. "Unless you'd prefer to withdraw." It was a lifeline she hadn't expected. A chance to remain connected, however tenuously, to the son she'd never known. "I'd like to continue if you're comfortable with that." John made a disgusted sound and stalked from the room, leaving his brother and birth mother facing each other across 25 years of absence. "He'll come around," Spencer said, though his tone suggested he wasn't entirely convinced. "He's always been the more emotional one of us." Eva nodded, not trusting herself to speak. As she turned to leave, Spencer called after her. "One more thing, Miss Davis. That photo, it's the only one we have. John has carried it with him since we were old enough to understand what it meant. It's important to him despite what you saw today." The revelation hit Eva like a physical blow. All these years she'd thought herself forgotten, erased from their lives by her own choice. But they had kept her image close, carried her with them in some small way. As she made her way to the door, a framed news article on the wall caught her eye. The headline read, "Thompson twins make medical history with groundbreaking transplant technique." But it wasn't the headline that made her stop in her tracks. It was the date of the article. October 17th, their birthday. And below that, a quote from John Thompson that made her blood run cold. "Our greatest motivation has always been finding the birth mother who abandoned us. Every life we save is a step closer to deserving answers." The drive back to her small design studio seemed to take hours. Eva's hands shook so badly she had to pull over twice to collect herself. The words from the article kept repeating in her mind like a terrible mantra. Every life we save is a step closer to deserving answers. Had they been looking for her all this time? Had they channeled their pain into saving others? Perhaps in some subconscious attempt to prove they were worthy of the mother who had given them away. By the time she reached her office, the sun had set completely, leaving the city bathed in the artificial glow of streetlights. The Davis design sign flickered weakly above the converted warehouse space. A far cry from the prestigious design firms downtown, but hers entirely. She'd built this business from nothing, one small project at a time while raising her daughter alone. Her daughter Louise. The thought hit Eva like a physical blow. What would she tell her? How would she explain that the brothers she'd never known existed were now potential clients? That the carefully constructed narrative of their family history that Louise's father had died before she was born was about to unravel completely. Eva unlocked the office door and collapsed into her chair, burying her face in her hands. Her phone buzzed with a text message, the screen illuminating the darkness. "Mom, don't forget dinner tonight. 7:30, Ryan's coming too. Love you, Louise." 23 years old now, just a year and a half after the twins, the daughter she had kept, the child she had found the strength to raise alone. How could she face her tonight? How could she sit across the dinner table from her daughter and her daughter's fiancé, making small talk about wedding plans when her entire world had just been turned upside down? But canceling wasn't an option. Louise would know something was wrong. She always did. Eva checked her watch. 6:45, just enough time to splash water on her face, reapply her makeup, and try to look like a woman who hadn't just had the most emotionally devastating reunion imaginable. As she gathered her things, her office phone rang. She almost let it go to voicemail, but years of struggling to build her business had ingrained the habit of answering every potential client call. "Davis Designs," she answered, trying to keep her voice steady. "Miss Davis, it's Spencer Thompson." Eva froze, her free hand gripping the edge of her desk so hard her knuckles turned white. "Dr. Thompson, I didn't expect to hear from you so soon." "I've been thinking about our conversation," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "About what you said regarding your circumstances when we were born." "Yes." Eva held her breath, waiting for judgment, for accusations, for the final door to close on any possibility of knowing her sons. "I'd like to meet again, professionally, of course, to discuss the renovation." Relief flooded through her so intense she had to sit down. "Of course. When would be convenient?" "Tomorrow morning, 9 o'clock at the house. John has surgery scheduled all day, so it would just be us." The implication was clear. John wasn't ready to see her again. Perhaps he never would be. But Spencer was offering an olive branch, however slender. "I'll be there," Eva confirmed, her mind already racing. What would they talk about? How much was she allowed to ask? Would she be able to keep the professional distance the situation demanded? Good. "And Miss Davis, please bring the preliminary designs we discussed before. This is still a business arrangement." "Understood." The line went dead, leaving Eva staring at the phone in her hand. She had 24 hours to prepare. Not just design plans, but emotionally. 24 hours to figure out what to tell Louise. 24 hours to decide how much of herself she was willing to risk by stepping back into the lives of the sons she had given away. "Mom, you're a million miles away tonight." Louise's voice cut through Eva's thoughts, bringing her attention back to the cozy Italian restaurant where they sat. Ryan, Louis's fiancé, nodded in agreement, concern evident in his kind face. "I'm sorry, sweetheart. Big project on my mind." It wasn't entirely a lie. The Thompson renovation would be the largest commission her firm had ever undertaken. Louise tilted her head, studying her mother with the same penetrating gaze Eva had seen earlier that day on Spencer's face. The resemblance had never struck her so forcefully before. The same analytical eyes, the same way of seeing through pretense. Must be some project. "You haven't touched your pasta, and you love their carbonara." Eva forced a forkful into her mouth, though it tasted like ashes. "It's a beautiful home. Old Georgian revival that needs updating." "That's great, Mom." Louise reached across the table to squeeze her hand. "This could be your breakthrough project." If only she knew. Ryan, always supportive, raised his glass. To Davis Designs, future decorator of Minneapolis's finest homes. Eva managed to smile, clinking her water glass against their wine glasses. The irony wasn't lost on her. Her children had all done well for themselves. The twins were successful doctors living in a mansion. Louise was finishing medical school herself, engaged to a promising young attorney. Somewhere along the way, Eva must have done something right despite all her mistakes. "So, let's talk wedding plans," she said, desperate to change the subject. "Have you decided on a venue yet?" Louise and Ryan exchanged glances, a silent communication passing between them. Another trait she shared with her half-brothers, that ability to speak volumes without words. "Actually, we wanted to talk to you about that," Louise said slowly. "We've been thinking about pushing the date back a bit." "Oh," Eva put down her fork. "Is everything okay?" "Everything's fine," Ryan assured her. "It's just Louise has been offered an amazing residency opportunity, but it would mean relocating to Boston for a year." "Harvard Medical," Louise added, unable to keep the excitement from her voice. "It's a specialized program in pediatric oncology." "Exactly what I want to focus on." Pediatric oncology, children's cancer, like Spencer's pediatric surgery. The parallels were eerie. Her children unknown to each other, all drawn to medicine, to healing. "That's wonderful news," Eva managed, genuinely proud despite the new complication this presented. "But Boston, that's so far." "It's just for a year," Louise reminded her. "And you could visit, or better yet, maybe expand Davis Designs to the East Coast." Eva laughed, the sound strained even to her own ears. "One city at a time, sweetheart." As the conversation flowed around her, Eva found herself studying her daughter's face, searching for traces of her brother's. They shared few physical features. Louise had inherited Eva's auburn hair and fair complexion, taking after her own father rather than the twins' dad, but there were similarities in expression, in mannerisms, in the determined set of their jaws when they were focused on something. Siblings who had never met, a family fractured before it could even form. "Mom, seriously, what's going on?" Louise asked as Ryan excused himself to take a phone call outside. "And don't say nothing. I know you better than that." The concern in her daughter's eyes broke something loose inside Eva. She had raised this remarkable young woman alone, had been honest with her about everything else in their lives. Louise deserved the truth. "I saw them today," she said quietly, the words emerging before she could reconsider. Louise's brow furrowed. "Saw who?" Eva took a deep breath. "Your brothers." The confusion on Louise's face deepened for a moment before understanding dawned, her eyes widening in shock. "You mean the twins? The babies you gave up before I was born?" Eva nodded, her throat tight with unshed tears. Louise was the only person in the world who knew about them. She had told her when she was 16 and asking questions about her father. Not everything, not the full story, but enough that Louise understood she had half-siblings somewhere in the world. "How? Where did you look for them?" The questions tumbled out. Louise's medical training evident in her methodical approach even in moments of shock. "They're the clients. The Georgian revival. It's their house." Eva let out a bitter laugh. "What are the odds, right? 25 years of wondering and I walk right into their living room with fabric swatches." Louise's hand flew to her mouth. "Oh my God. Did they know? Did you tell them?" "They know now. One of them had kept a photo of me holding them as newborns. It fell out of his pocket while I was there." "A photo? So they knew about you? They remembered you?" Eva shook her head. "They were only a year old when I gave them up, but apparently their adoptive parents gave them the photo. One of them, John, has carried it with him. Louise sat back in her chair processing this information. And now, what happens now? I'm meeting with one of them tomorrow, Spencer. He wants to continue with the renovation. And the other one, John? Eva looked down at her barely touched meal. He's not as open to the idea of having me in their lives. Louise reached across the table again, taking both of Eva's hands in hers. Mom, this is huge. Are you okay? The simple question unleashed the tears Eva had been holding back all day. She shook her head, unable to speak. Oh, Mom. Louise moved to the chair beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. I'm here. Whatever you need. As Eva leaned into her daughter's embrace, a terrible thought occurred to her. A question she had never allowed herself to ask in all these years. Louise, do you think I should have given you up, too? Given you the same opportunities they had? Louise pulled back, shock written across her features. What? No, Mom. You've given me everything I've ever needed. Look at me. I'm going to be a doctor. I'm getting married to an amazing man. You did that. You made that possible. But they had 2 parents, a stable home, and I had you, Louise said firmly. The strongest woman I know. Do you think I'd be who I am today without you showing me what it means to never give up? Eva wiped her eyes, overwhelmed by her daughter's unwavering support. There's something else, she admitted. Something I saw at their house. An article about a medical breakthrough they made. It said they've been motivated by finding me, that every life they save is a step closer to deserving answers. Louise went still, her expression unreadable. When she finally spoke, her voice was quiet but firm. Then, I think it's time they got those answers, don't you? As Ryan returned to the table, Louise squeezed her mother's hand one last time before leaning close to whisper in her ear. But Mom, there's something I never told you. Last year at a medical conference in Chicago, I met 2 doctors named Thompson. Twin brothers. We talked about a new transplant technique they'd pioneered. The world seemed to tilt beneath Eva as Louise finished her whispered revelation. I think I already know your sons, Mom, and I'm almost certain they know exactly who you are. What do you mean you've met them? Eva whispered, her face drained of color. The restaurant around them continued its cheerful buzz, oblivious to the seismic shift occurring at their small corner table. Let's talk about this later, she murmured, squeezing her mother's hand. Ryan looked between them, sensing the tension. Everything okay? Fine, Louise answered smoothly, years of clinical training evident in her composure. Just some mother-daughter stuff. Mom's got a big new client and I've got news about a mentorship opportunity at the hospital. Eva barely heard the rest of the dinner conversation. Her mind racing through the implications of Louise's revelation. Her daughter had met the twins. Had they known who she was? Had they orchestrated this whole renovation job to find Eva? And if so, why? Revenge, closure, something else entirely. The drive back to her apartment was a blur. Only when they were safely inside with Ryan promising to pick up Louise in an hour did Eva finally ask the question burning in her mind. Tell me everything. How did you meet them? What did they say? Did they know who you were? Louise sat on the sofa, tucking her legs beneath her in the same way she had since childhood. It was at the North American Transplant Conference last September. I was presenting a poster on my research project and they were keynote speakers. Did you know who they were before you met them? Louise shook her head. Not at first. I attended their presentation. They've developed a revolutionary technique for reducing rejection in organ transplants. Brilliant work. Honestly, pride colored her voice before she caught herself. Anyway, there was a reception afterward. They approached me about my research. Just like that, out of nowhere. That's how these conferences work, Mom. Networking, mentorship opportunities. But looking back, I don't think it was a coincidence. John mentioned he'd read my published case study from last year. He knew my name. Eva's heart raced. Davis isn't an uncommon name. No, but there was something in the way he looked at me. And then he asked where I was from. And when I said Minneapolis, they both seemed, I don't know, expectant, like they were waiting for me to say something specific. Did you tell them about me? Not explicitly, but they asked what inspired me to go into medicine, and I mentioned my single mom who sacrificed everything to give me opportunities. Spencer asked if my father was still in the picture, and I said no, that he'd died before I was born. The lie Eva had told Louise until she was old enough for the more complicated truth that Louise's father had abandoned them just as the twins' father had. What did they say to that? Nothing direct. But Spencer gave John this look and then they invited me to join them for dinner with some colleagues. We talked about medicine mostly, but they kept steering the conversation back to family. They mentioned being adopted, asked if I had siblings, and you said no. Eva guessed. Actually, Louise looked down at her hands. I said I had half-brothers somewhere, but we'd never met. Eva gasped. Louise, I'm sorry, Mom. It just came out. I didn't name you or give details. But the way they looked at each other, I knew something was up. After dinner, John excused himself and Spencer asked if I'd be interested in a mentorship program they run. He said my perspective would be valuable. Did you accept? I said I'd think about it. He gave me his card. Both their cards, actually. Louise reached for her wallet and pulled out 2 business cards, handing them to Eva. I never called. Something felt off. And then I got busy with the Harvard application. Eva stared at the cards in her hand. Dr. Spencer Thompson, Dr. John Thompson. Prestigious hospital affiliations, phone numbers, email addresses. Such a direct line to her sons had been sitting in her daughter's wallet for months. Mom, Louise said softly. I think they've been looking for both of us. I think they found me first and now they found you. But why go through all this elaborate scheme? Why not just contact me directly? Louise's expression turned thoughtful. Maybe they needed to see you on their terms in a position where they had the power. Or maybe what? Maybe they needed to make sure you were worthy of knowing them. The words hung heavy in the air between them. Worthy. That terrible quote from the article echoed again in Eva's mind. Every life we save is a step closer to deserving answers. What had she done to deserve them? What could she possibly say to justify her choices? I have to cancel tomorrow's meeting, Eva said suddenly, reaching for her phone. This is all too calculated, too manipulative. Louise caught her wrist. Mom, stop. Think about this. Yes, maybe they engineered this meeting, but they've spent 25 years wondering why their mother gave them away and kept another child. They've built their entire careers around proving their worth. Don't you think they deserve those answers directly from you? Eva sank back into her chair, the weight of her past choices pressing down on her like a physical presence. What if John is right to hate me? What if I can't make them understand? Then at least you'll have tried. Louise's voice was gentle but firm. And for what it's worth, I don't think they hate you. They wouldn't have gone to all this trouble if they didn't care. Care or want closure? Eva amended. Either way, you owe them this conversation. Eva nodded slowly, knowing her daughter was right. Will you come with me tomorrow? Louise hesitated. I don't think so. Not yet. This first real conversation needs to be between you and them, but I'm here if you need me. When Ryan returned to pick up Louise, Eva hugged her daughter tightly, grateful beyond words for her unwavering support. As they left, Eva returned to the business cards on her coffee table, tracing the embossed names with her fingertip. Her sons, successful, brilliant men who might have been planning this confrontation for years. She picked up her phone and sent a text to the number on Spencer's card. I'll be there at 9 a.m. I think we have a lot to discuss beyond paint colors. The response came almost immediately. Yes, we do. The Thompson mansion looked different in the morning light, less intimidating, more welcoming. Or perhaps it was Eva who had changed overnight, steeling herself for the conversation ahead. As she approached the front door, it swung open before she could ring the bell. Spencer stood there dressed casually in jeans and a sweater rather than yesterday's formal attire. You came, he said, sounding almost surprised. Did you think I wouldn't? John was certain you'd run again. The accusation stung, but Eva nodded her understanding. Is he here? He said he had surgeries scheduled, but I suspect he'll find a way to join us once I tell him what you texted last night. Spencer led her through to a sunlit kitchen rather than the formal living room where they'd met yesterday. The space was warm and inviting. Stainless steel appliances blending seamlessly with rich wood cabinetry. A pot of coffee sat on the counter alongside 3 mugs. 3. He had expected John to appear after all. I like what you've done with the kitchen, Eva said, falling back on her designer instincts. The contrast between modern and traditional works well. Our mother designed it, Spencer replied. Betty Thompson. She has quite an eye. She sounds remarkable. She is. Spencer poured coffee into 2 of the mugs. She and Dad gave us everything. Love, stability,